Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to Sports Talk 920. I am your host, Michael Goodman. We'll be going solo probably for the next couple weeks here. Expect Rudy to be back around football time. I know it's been a while since he's been on here, but we'll get him back on here in due time. But anyway, lots of stuff to talk about here this week. Getting back in the full swing of the sports world. We have football coming up. Training camp has started, so teams have been reporting this week. So football is back on the way. Of course, racing is in full swing, NASCAR. With a big weekend, we talked a lot about that in last week's episode. The baseball trade deadline is coming up here in a few days, so we'll see maybe some moves, especially with the Milwaukee Brewers. Our guys like Braun and guys like Lucroy, are they going to be on their way out? Kevin Durant scores his first points in the Oracle or whatever the Golden State Warriors play. He scores his first points. That was a big deal for like 30 seconds. So I guess we can throw basketball in there too. But again, thanks for tuning in today. Or if you're listening on YouTube or later, just welcome. First wanted to dive into here this week. Obviously, last Sunday, wife and I went to the Brickyard 400 at Indy, and just gotta say, as far as going, it was hot. It was incredibly hot. I think it was the third hottest Brickyard 400 in the 23 years that they've been doing it, and I think it was like 93 degrees, but the heat index, you're talking about 106, and where we sat was 100% in the sun. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about getting around that. But it was incredibly hot. But as far as the experience, a lot of the stuff that I think, as far as the fans concerned, you normally pay, for like a pit pass to get some of this stuff. It was available for free, at least where we were sitting in the infield, and where you got to see the players go from the drivers meeting to the drivers meeting to the driver introductions, and kind of doing the walk across and be able to get some autographs and stuff like that. I got Austin Dillon to sign my ticket for that event, so that was kind of cool to see. And then you got to see a lot of the drivers up close, some of the drivers that were signing a lot of autographs. It was just kind of cool to see that. And other than that, we were sitting right behind pit road. I mean, basically just a small chain link fence that separated us from the pit crew. So it was basically probably the poor man's version of getting a hot pass, and as I was telling the wife, probably a little bit better, because the pit road is probably 10 feet long, or like behind the pit wall, where the pit boxes are, is probably about 10 feet wide. It's pretty tight in there, and then so to see no one really fit in there, or some of these guys that had hot passes not be able to fit in there and try to almost be in the way. It was a little crazy, but so it was kind of cool to watch. We were right behind Chase Elliott and Jeff Gordon's pit boxes, so to watch them kind of do what they do in between the pit stops and some of the stuff that you can see them looking at. And I even seen Rick Hendrick right in Chase Elliott's pit box. I was watching actually the TV monitor that was playing the race broadcast, and look up, and there was Rick Hendrick. So that was pretty cool. But anyway, going to the race itself, it was basically incredibly boring. I don't think there's any ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's no way of twisting that. Kyle Busch, was far and beyond the rest of the field, and then Toyota's basically NASCAR's, I think, kryptonite as far as why they're getting fans or not. So there was that. I don't know why ESPN's be playing the whole last drive of the Patriots game here. I'm sorry for that background, but just dominate. I don't know if it's cheating or they have stuff figured out better right now, and either way, the big thing is that I think as far as the racing is concerned, NASCAR was unpleased about what happened, and I think rightfully so. Racing wasn't good. I think I thought it was a little unfair that they felt like they needed to blame almost the racetrack for the lack of attendance and bad racing there. Which, if you know, I mean, it's a smooth as glass racetrack and not really maybe the best for a car. There's not a lot of character in the track, as far as that's concerned. Because it has to be so smooth for the Indy cars that race there every Memorial Day. And obviously what works best for stock cars a lot of times don't work the best for Indy cars, vice versa, and I think that's partly what's going on with that track there. But again, I was kind of listening to the NASCAR radio and kind of coming up with or they were trying to come up with ways to maybe make the racing better. Maybe adding 2 tires, whatever, or adding not 2 tires, but 2 wider tires on the right side, maybe to give them a little bit better handling. I don't know. I know someone suggested that that they kind of do what they used to do at the restrictor plate tracks, adding the little gurney flap on top. The gully bill or whatever they called it, or maybe the wicker bit, maybe on the spoiler, which I don't think they tried. They tried adding more downforce as far as the downforce package of last year, but maybe adding even more in more of a crazy sense would work better. And Dave Moody, which I'm gonna sneeze here. Dave Moody, who hosts the show. Ooh, excuse me. Dave Moody, who hosts the show, kind of made it sound like it was a ridiculous thing to come up with putting those gurney flaps on, because if they're like, if he would have done it, or if it would have worked, NASCAR would have done it. They're a professional league. They would have done it by now. And really, I mean, not just ripping on NASCAR, but I think any professional sport can maybe have I don't know, either the foresight of looking over things or maybe not doing the best thing. I think we're talking about, NASCAR again too, who, if they did all these studies and all these tests, and I'm sure, I'm not saying they're dumb, but all these tests back in 2008 or 2007 when they came out with a car tomorrow, and you finally realized that the wing that you had put on the car back then created flips when the car went backwards, because, hell, I mean, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes, you got to think about the worst case scenario. Sometimes these cars do flip around, spin out. It happens in stock car racing. I mean, downforce-wise, the front way, I'm sure it handled like a dream. I'm sure it was the best thing since sliced bread. But, they don't think about just getting spun out. It was a simple thing. I mean, maybe a simple oversight, I don't know. You talk about MLB baseball. When the Tide in the All-Star game did not knowing what to do. That should have been something that you might have looked into. I mean, I could see you could partly see the oversight, but you can partly see how can you not see something like this happening at any point in your future? If these leagues, if these professional leagues are this smart, how do they do some of these dumbest oversights and it calls in a game, calls in rule changes or whatnot? I mean, all sports do it. Not just ripping on NASCAR, not just ripping on baseball, but I mean, all sports do it. I mean, NFL can't even figure out what a catch is. They sometimes, I think you kind of elude yourself and you make things so confusing that you don't even know. I mean, sometimes the simplest of answers will just pass you by. And to use that excuse and listening to Dave Moody, a lot of times it's believe me, NASCAR is a professional business. A lot of times we've seen it in the past. They just stupidly overlook it. I mean, not to call. I mean, I guess I'll call NASCAR stupid at times, or any professional league stupid at times, but sometimes it's the simplest oversight. I mean, you almost do too much studying and too much trying to perfect it too much, and you just need a fan or somebody to say, hey, this is, maybe try this out. So with that being said, again, the racing I think needs to get better there. I don't know. I think the experience, as far as the fan point, as far as what Indy puts on, the ticket prices, maybe a little bit on the higher end on the face value side. Maybe that's something they could look into, kind of lowering ticket prices a little bit to get fans to come. I mean, for one, too, it was just so scorching hot, too. I mean, for the, I think even on a good day, the kind of racing you'd get out there, probably not going to bring that much fans, but hopefully they figure something out. A lot of things, it's going to be in NASCAR's hands to change rule packages, not for them to rip on the racetrack and having a poor showing. Because actually, we talked to a state trooper for that. It was kind of crazy. It was, I think, back in the Indy 500. Of course, the 100th anniversary of the Indy 500, which I think was by far, calling it to be, the 100th anniversary of the race was by far more packed, I think, than it's ever been. Probably in recent memory. They had 400,000 people at Indy, which again has a seating capacity of 250,000, but a lot of the general admission stuff, and it looked like half the people were just going to a concert that were in that general admission area. And then it was, I think for Sunday, I think it was probably right around 55 to 60,000 in a 250,000 seating capacity track, and that's, that's quite a bit of people. 60 to 55,000 people isn't that bad. I mean, it's probably equivalent right around of an NFL football game, but. Again, I think usually these tracks, when they show up to one spot, they're not showing up there 8 times a year. Especially for Indy, they only host 2 races or 3 races a year, I suppose. So that's not that good. And as far as the Xfinity Series race, I think it was only 5,000 people. 5,000 people in a 250,000 seat capacity crowd. I was talking to my dad before the Cup race on Sunday. He said it looked like there was 100 people there. I mean, you think about it, 250,000 seating capacity, 5,000 people. Some might have been in the infield, hot passes, or some might have been in the tower terrace. So on the outside, I mean, you're talking maybe